Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
Have you been to Broadway recently? Joe Biden has, and what a show it was.
There's no business like Biden, business like no business I know. You didn't know I did stage, did you?
I'm not sure. I'm really glad to discover that fact.
No, I was actually, ironically, I was always, no matter what the character, Kelsey Grammer as Frasier. So I was a little one-dimensional.
I thought you were going to say you were Ethel Merman. I wasn't sure.
Well, I started off with the Ethel Merman song because we're going to do Biden on Broadway. But, I actually... I did plays every year. And again, like anything else, it was the camaraderie, the rehearsals, and then the performance night was so much fun. It might be the most fun I've ever had in my life was doing theater. But singing is not necessarily my gift.
Well, I didn't know that about you. There you go. Things I'm continuing to learn.
Can you imagine had I excelled in that field, how well I would have gotten along with my colleagues once I got to Broadway? This is quite a group we have here.
Well, and it's changed dramatically since you would have made your debut. And the president is quite comfortable there. But Biden on Broadway, it was a big sign, and it's a really flashy sign. And there's been articles written about it, ABC News, Associated Press, and many others.
ABC News, ABC writes, President Biden on Monday told a packed Broadway theater full of big-name stars hosting a fundraiser in his honor. He was running for re-election because Donald Trump is determined to destroy America. I want to get into all the things he claimed. But before we get too far, and all the influences of the left in terms of Hollywood and television, this particular 51,000 group Actors Equity Association is probably one of the most laughable points I will make as far as equity in Hollywood. The left always loves to make the new ground rules, and then they fail them the greatest. But David, I think what fascinated you the most was, all right, so the press was allowed in to hear Biden make all these ridiculous comments that we're going to cover, and then they were told to leave. Doesn't it make you wonder? The real story is, what weren't we allowed to see and why?
Yeah, well, let's set the tone. You've got a theater on Broadway. You've got 1,500 people in the room. They paid between $250 and I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars to be there as far as the seating went. And the president's going to come in and make a speech. Now, there's a lot of pieces and parts about this that are quite interesting. But the evening also had entertainment. The only part that the media was allowed to cover were the speeches that were made, and then they were shooed away. So I don't know what happened for the next several hours in that theater. But they didn't want anybody else to see it either.
I think it's safe to say it was a leftist hootenanny. All right, the Actors Equity Association, 51,000 members, which, by the way, and again, you and I love to just quote Wikipedia, because that's just how quickly you could get this information if you were at all curious. But here's this organization that sounds so thoughtful and so giving. The Actors Equity Association, 51,000 members. And if you go to Wikipedia, ensuring you make on average $35 to $40 an hour. Now, these leftist stars that really want to take all the bows, I went through 2022, the top 20 paid actors, just for grins, sure. Right? So the outpouring and compassion from the Actors Equity Association's 51,000 members means you and I'd get $35 an hour. Tom Cruise, $100 million. Will Smith, $35 million. Leo DiCaprio, $30 million. Brad Pitt, $30 million. The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, $22.5 million. Will Ferrell, $22 million. Chris Hemsworth, $20 million. Vin Diesel, $20 million. Tom Hardy, $20 million. Joaquin Phoenix. Can I break into Dion DiMucci? Anybody here seen Joaquin Phoenix? He made $20 million. Notice anything about that list, David?
Yeah, there were no Avengers on it. Think if the Avengers had been on that list, how much money they would have if they had a movie last year.
There are also no women on that list. I don't have to tell you, it's not very multicultural either.
Well, yeah, let's go to what the messaging was. The president came out and talked about the fact that MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump are determined to destroy American democracy.
Isn't that dangerous rhetoric in and of itself? I heard that during Obama, too.
Oh, well, but Biden has, yes, and he picked it all straight off of Obama's plate. But Biden has become the high priest now of the American democracy. He is the one who is here to save the soul of the nation. And that comment was echoed by the folks that spoke on behalf of all those actors. The person who introduced Biden was Jeffrey Seller. Now, he's a theater producer who worked on the projects Rent, In the Heights, and Hamilton, which means he is doing a lot of work with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Mm-hmm. Here's what he said, quote, according to ABC News, President Biden, I am here to pledge to you that we in this theater, all 1,500 strong of us, are your warriors, are your troops in ensuring that we maintain, affirm, and nurture the soul of our democracy and the soul of our nation.
One nation under the Actors Equity Association.
Indivisible unless you disagree with us. Yes.
So the soul of America is determined by, I was going to make the point.
$35 an hour for all the rest of you. Yeah. So.
I always said that liberalism and appeasement was going to potentially get us all killed. That was not necessarily hyperbole. But this notion that only one person can embody the soul of America and that it's Joe Biden or Barack Obama. I didn't like when the right was saying Barack Obama's intent was to destroy America, and I don't like this hyperbole being used by the president either.
Time out. Before you even get there, what is the soul of a nation?
Well,
these folks, by and large, are advocates of the godless equation. They don't believe human beings have souls. They don't believe that there are souls placed there by the divine creator, that spark of life. They believe that people crawled out of an amoeba soup. They believe in the random collision of atoms that created the consequence of humankind. There's no divine spark in the godless equation. Now, suddenly they're all concerned not only about the soul of the nation, but they want to be the saviors of the soul. What kind of messianic complex do these people possess? But on top of all that, they're play acting. They don't even believe in that stuff.
But the difference is you believe like them and support them, or you're an enemy of democracy. So they transpose themselves as democracy. They transpose themselves as the moral authority. And then by you disagreeing with them, you're an enemy of the state. This is really scary stuff, David. Now, the second part was democracy itself is at stake. I love that line because this is Joe Biden talking. The notion that if Joe Biden isn't president, if Nancy Pelosi doesn't go back until the toe tag arrives, unless they're in charge, there is no republic. There is no Congress. There is no executive branch. There is no democracy. They have to be in control. We're not allowed to disagree, which, by the way, is the soul of democracy, is moral, self-governed people having differences and finding common ground. I mean, the next one I'm going to share is even more ludicrous. But
well, let me stop a second here because we've interchanged words here. Now, we're not confused. Sometimes we do run on sentences and interchange words. When they're talking about democracy, there's nothing in their rhetoric that talks about republic.
Oh no, they're not even interested in a republic. Right. They're in a mob rule.
It's not a coincidence. They do not believe in self-government based upon the created order of rights given by God to man. They believe that whatever the coolest kids decide is what the rules are. That's their definition of democracy. And it's very important that we make it clear that's what they're talking about here. The word, I would be shocked if the word republic even entered into that theater.
Oh, yeah. No, they don't even know what republic is.
The president will do that now and then. He'll mix the terms because he knows everyone's watching. But we have to be very clear about this because Barack Obama, in his second inaugural address, basically attacked the Declaration of Independence. And like his predecessor, Woodrow Wilson, in the early 1900s, continued the journey to remove the Declaration from the created order, from the platform of the creator in and of itself, and basically was calling us a radically secularized nation. This is what's happening. This is what is happening in the dark, in the theater, on Broadway. And Joe Biden is there with his foot soldiers, with his elites, with his shock troops. Now, when you want to know why is everything coming out in public culture and in media from this perspective of darkness, look, they're saying it out loud.
When you subscribe to 1850 Main Street, you're the first to find out what's happening next with new guests, publications, and events. And when you spread the word about 1850 Main Street, you're helping others find real answers to the real questions facing America right now. To learn more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. And please, tell a friend.
ABC continues the story, Democracy is at stake. The president told the theater audience, hate groups have been emboldened. I'm going to take you on a little journey there. I had some time while I was waiting for you to arrive. Books are being banned. Children go to schools fearing shootings. I mean, again, you're the president of the United States. I get hyperbole. I get exaggeration. But this kind of us versus them.
This guy sounds like a televangelist.
But my first thought was, because then he concluded with political violence is never acceptable. And I'm going to make that clear. And it was with Antifa, and it was with Black Lives Matter, and it was at a baseball diamond where Republicans were practicing. May I remind everyone that on January 6th, the only person shot and killed was a protester. And there's still been no charges against that. But I went through school shootings. We could just do it by terms. I'm going to do one term of Barack Obama. 2013, 26 school shootings. 2014, 36 school shootings. 2015, 22 school shootings. 2016, 20 school shootings. Now, under Donald Trump, 2017, 17 school shootings. 2018, 43 school shootings. 2018, 43 school shootings, or 63 school shootings. And then 2020, 19. Now, I can understand if he was making this comment in the previous election, at least he could point to we went from 17 to 43 to 63, and then I'll just ignore that we went down to 20. But then Joe Biden becomes president. From 19 to 36 school shootings in 2021. 2022, 53 school shootings. 2023, 42 school shootings. In other words, school shootings have nothing to do with who the president is and what party they're affiliated with. They're already too high, and it's got several issues that were not big enough to talk about, but it has nothing. But the notion that if Donald Trump is elected, kids will be killed at school, democracy will be destroyed, he will destroy the nation. This is beyond partisan political rhetoric. This is very dangerous, especially coming from the sitting president.
Well, whenever the president of the United States, whether he be Donald Trump or Joe Biden or anybody, begins to attempt to link who holds that seat on the Oval Office to something as random and as on the ground as what causes someone to become a violent shooter, that's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Well, it'd be like saying, elect Donald Trump and cancer will go through the roof. It's a ridiculous notion.
It's a ridiculous, and it doesn't matter whether it's the president or of the United States this year or last year or this term or last term. It doesn't matter, and that's one of the things that's really great. I think people are far more turned off now by that rhetoric than they've ever been.
I hope so. I pray so.
I think COVID helped break that down. So
Biden also accused Trump and his allies of bowing down to authoritarians. Then he pointed out Putin. By the way, he's saying this the evening after he announces he's cutting a deal for a prisoner swap with radical Iran. We're now negotiating with terrorists. And I mean, it's just all, like World Wrestling Federation, I guess. It's just hyperbole and rhetoric. But, it's kind of like what we always say. There's nowhere you go where you're not the president of the United States. And a president of the United States can't talk about this, about another citizen or another world or viewpoint and policy view in such a divisive way. It's worse than what he's accusing.
Well, probably the line of the night. Biden walks out on stage, according to ABC News, and he walks out to the music of All That Jazz. And he spoke about when his sons were little, how the president would take them up to New York twice a year to watch a show. And he went on to state that one year he brought his boys to see Bette Midler, whose act, according to ABC News, wasn't exactly known to be family friendly. And that Bette Midler singled out Joe Biden and his kids and said this, according to the president, "Who would bring two kids to a show like this?" she asked, according to Biden. It prompted a round of raucous laughter. Quote from the president, My boys use that as a badge of courage, he said. Bette Midler picked us out of a crowd. Families all over the world have memories like that to cherish. Now, where does that fit on the cringe factor to you?
Or where does that fit on the soul factor?
Yeah. So you basically brought your kids to a show that got dirty, and the performer literally called you out saying, "What are you doing here with these kids?" And you consider that a badge of honor.
Three things go through my head because I've been there. One, I've been the Bette Midler. All right. So I was asked to come and do stand-up comedy with Victoria Jackson, who used to be on the cast of Saturday Night Live in the 80s. And we went to this small town. And when we got there, it became very apparent that for this town, this was like a small community gathering. So it was like a church gathering. Little children were sitting on parents' laps. And we were thinking, oh, well, the material was going to, now I'm not particularly dirty, but even there were some things I wouldn't do in front of a child, let alone things that we had planned. So that's a real thing for Bette Midler. One of our favorite comedians, John Mulaney did this in his most recent stand-up because he was going to incorporate in the material his journey with drug abuse. And he pointed out a kid up in the balcony. Now, the truth of the matter is, it's uncomfortable for the performer, too, because they have something planned for adults. I used to get this on the radio when parents would call up. You know, if I'm talking about abortion, or if I'm talking about premarital sex, or I'm talking about pornography, or I'm not doing it assuming the children are curled up next to the radio listening to issue-oriented talk radio. So when a parent calls up and says, "You betrayed me. I had my kid in the car," I'm like, you got to be the parent.
There's a dial there. It's there for
exactly.
a reason.
I didn't anticipate any children under 20, let alone 12, would be listening. So there is that part. All right, that was unfair to Bette Midler. Number one, you're a moron, and you just admitted it. You just embarrassed yourself, and insulted Bette Midler. Secondly, how is that? My dad accidentally took us as three young boys to a movie called The Other Side of Midnight, and it had a scene that I don't think Dad would have taken us had he known ahead of time. And it can happen, and we giggled it off, but that's not the badge of courage and honor from my childhood. I don't think that's Dad's shining moment. Little League was. Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. Cringe.
It's such a cringe moment that you just kind of say, but then what's really weird is, could you imagine the people sitting around at ABC News having to write that? Now, obviously, the president made perhaps more remarks than that. So they might have been able to pick, because they weren't going to quote the whole speech. And, they were, this was the best that he had to say that they decided to put in the article. I mean, I don't even want to know what else was going on there.
And then, and then the dysfunction that those kids grew up to become makes I'm not being mean, but I'm just saying, we're to train up our children, and this one son.
Well, in a Hunter Biden era, you're kind of bragging about that. I don't know. But anyhow, it happened.
But it does make you wonder what we missed, right?
Joe Biden was on Broadway, and the troops stood up and said, 1,500 strong, we're with you, and we're going to save America. Okay, let's think about this. Think if you've watched the last several editions of the Tony Awards, to think of the same group of people that have put all that together saying out loud to the President of the United States and to all the watching world in the media, we are going to save the soul of this nation. Just stop. Let that sink in. Breathe with that for a second. They are there to help save the soul of a nation.
So from Billy Graham to Joe Biden, the Actors Equity Association, and the cast of Rent, we find the new soul and direction of America.
I think we're in great hands, don't you?
The only thing left shocking in life is the truth.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.